The wrench trembled in Marcus's hands as he knelt beside the main water line. The sound of Karen's pool party echoing through the fence laughter, splashing the clink of champagne glasses. She had no idea what was coming. In 30 seconds, her crystal-clear pool would become a nightmare, and every guest would witness the moment her perfect life crumbled. The valve turned with a satisfying click. "Enjoy your party, Karen," he whispered, as the first bubbles began to rise. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at his dying tomato plants. Their leaves curled and brown despite the scorching July heat. The irrigation system he'd spent 3 years perfecting lay dormant, the PVC pipes as dry as bones. His water bill had tripled in the past month, yet he barely had enough pressure to fill a coffee cup. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, kneeling beside the main meter. The digital display spun like a slot machine, numbers climbing even, though every faucet in his house was turned off. The sound of splashing water drifted over the 6-foot privacy fence that separated his property from his neighbors. Karen Whitmore's laughter rang out, sharp and grating, followed by the voices of what sounded like a dozen people. Marcus had lived next to Karen for 8 years, ever since his wife Alina passed and he'd needed to downsize. In all that time, he'd maintained the peace through gritted teeth and forced smiles. Karen was the kind of neighbor who called the city if his grass grew an inch too tall, who complained about his workshop noise during legal hours, who somehow always managed to make his life a little more difficult. But this was different. This was theft. At 62, Marcus wasn't as spry as he used to be, but adrenaline carried him up the rungs. What he saw made his blood run cold. Karen's backyard, once a modest patch of grass with a small garden, had been transformed into something out of a luxury resort magazine. A massive in-ground pool dominated the space, easily 30 feet long and 15 feet wide, with crystalline water that reflected the afternoon sun like a mirror. Expensive deck furniture surrounded the pool, and a built-in hot tub bubbled in one corner, but it wasn't the pool that made Marcus's hands clench the ladder until his knuckles went white. It was the water line. A thick black hose snaked from the pool's filtration system, disappearing under the fence and connecting directly to the water spigot on Marcus's side of the property. His water spigot, the one hidden behind his tool shed that he used for his garden irrigation. "Son of a bitch," he breathed. Karen emerged from her sliding glass door, wearing a flowing white cover-up over a designer swimsuit. Even at 55, she moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything she wanted. Her platinum blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the humidity, and her smile was the practiced expression of someone posing for invisible cameras. More champagne, everyone. She called out to her guests, a collection of women Marcus recognized from the neighborhood. "We have plenty of everything." Marcus climbed down the ladder, his mind racing. How long had this been going on? The pool looked established, not freshly installed. The landscaping around it was mature, the deck furniture weathered enough to suggest months of use. He marched to his back door and grabbed his phone, scrolling through his water bills from the past 6 months. The pattern was unmistakable. Every month since February, his usage had steadily climbed, even though his consumption habits hadn't changed. What started as an extra $50 in February had become an additional $300 in June. Marcus stormed back outside, his face flushed with rage. He pounded on Karen's front door, each knock echoing like a gunshot. The door opened to reveal Karen's daughter Jessica, a woman in her late 20s with her mother's sharp features, but none of her practiced charm. "Oh, hi, Mr. Chen. Mom's kind of busy right now with her pool party. I need to speak with your mother. Now." Jessica's eyebrows rose at his tone. "Is everything okay?" "No, everything is not okay." Karen appeared behind her daughter, still wearing her cover-up, but now sporting oversized sunglasses that hid her expression. "Marcus, what's wrong? You look upset. I want you to disconnect from my water line immediately." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Karen's smile never wavered, but something shifted behind those sunglasses. "I'm sorry, what? You heard me. You've been stealing water from my property for 6 months. I have the bills to prove it." "That's quite an accusation. I think you might be confused. I saw the hose, Karen. It's connected to my spigot." Jessica looked back and forth between them, confusion written across her face. "Mom, what's he talking about?" Karen stepped onto her front porch and pulled. The door closed behind her, leaving Jessica inside. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of a threat. "You need to be very careful about the accusations you make, Marcus. Very careful. Are you threatening me?" "I'm protecting myself from slander." Karen adjusted her sunglasses. "If you think I'm somehow connected to your waterline, prove it. But I'd suggest you have very solid evidence before you make that claim public." Marcus felt his heart hammering. Against his ribs, "The evidence is in my backyard." "Then call the police, call the water company, call whoever you want." Karen's smile returned, cold and predatory. "But ask yourself this, who do you think they'll believe? The respected real estate agent who's lived in this neighborhood for 15 years and serves on the Homeowners Association board? Or the bitter old man who's been nothing but trouble since his wife died?" The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "How dare you?" "I dare because I can." Karen stepped closer, her voice dropping even lower. "You want to play games with me, Marcus? You'll lose. I have lawyers, I have connections, and I have a reputation in this community that you can't touch." She turned to go back inside, then paused with her hand on the door handle. "Oh, and Marcus, my pool party this Saturday is going to be amazing. The whole neighborhood's invited, well, almost the whole neighborhood." The door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded like a gunshot. Marcus stood on her porch for a long moment, his hands shaking with rage and something else fear. Karen was right about one thing. She did have connections. She was the kind of person who knew which palms to grease and which strings to pull. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed Marcus Chen was just another defeated old man who would roll over and accept being robbed. She was about to learn how wrong she was. His background as a mechanical engineer, dormant since retirement, came flooding back as he traced water flow patterns and pressure distributions. If Karen wanted to play games, he'd show her what a real game looked like. The pool party was in 5 days. 5 days to plan, prepare, and deliver justice that Karen would never forget. As he worked late into the night, designing his revenge, with the precision of a master craftsman, Marcus allowed himself one small smile. Karen Whitmore was about to learn that some neighbors bite back. Marcus woke before dawn, his engineer's mind already spinning through calculations. The municipal water system diagrams were spread across his kitchen table like battle plans, annotated with his precise handwriting. Red circles marked key junction. Points, blue arrows, traced flow patterns, and yellow highlights indicated pressure valves. His phone buzzed with a text from his daughter Sarah in Portland. "Dad, got your water bill photo. That's insane. Are you sure there's not a leak?" He typed back, "No leak. Problem being resolved soon." What he didn't tell Sarah was that the problem would be resolved in exactly 4 days at 3 p.m. on Saturday, 30 minutes into Karen's pool party. Marcus had spent the night researching more than just water systems. Karen's social media was a goldmine of information. Her Instagram account, @KarenWhitmoreHomes, showcased her real estate success with perfectly curated photos of luxury properties and aspirational lifestyle content. But it was her recent posts that made Marcus's jaw clench. Photo after photo of her pool parties, tagged with #BlessedLife and #LivingMyBestLife. Comments from neighbors praising her beautiful oasis and asking about her amazing water pressure. Karen soaking up the admiration, while literally stealing the money from Marcus's pocket. But the Saturday party was special. The post from 3 days ago made that clear. Pool party of the century this Saturday. Celebrating my biggest sale ever, the Morrison Estate. Champagne, catered food, and swimming all afternoon. So grateful for this incredible life. #blessed #pool party, #success, 37 likes, 15 comments, and a guest list that included half the neighborhood, 2 city council members, and Karen's real estate team. Perfect. Marcus made his first stop at Henderson's Hardware, where he'd been a customer for 8 years. Old Pete Henderson looked up from his inventory clipboard with a smile. "Marcus, haven't seen you in a while. How's the garden coming along?" "That's actually why I'm here." Marcus pulled out a handwritten list. "I need some specialized plumbing supplies. It's a bit unusual." Pete squinted at the list, his weathered face creasing with confusion. "Ball valves, T-joints, flexible hosing, ... Marcus, this looks like you're planning to reroute something major. You doing a whole system overhaul." Something like that. Marcus kept his voice casual. You know how it is. One small problem leads to a bigger project. Tell me about it. Pete gathered the supplies, chatting about the heat wave and water restrictions, while Marcus's mind raced ahead to the installation. You want the premium hosing or the standard? Premium. This needs to work perfectly. Whatever you're building, it'll last forever with this stuff. Pete rang up the total, $312. You sure you don't want to hire a professional for this kind of work? Marcus handed over his credit card. I'm an engineer, Pete. I think I can handle it. What Pete didn't know was that Marcus had already called the city's water department. That morning, claiming to be a contractor who needed to understand the sewer system layout for a renovation project, the helpful clerk had emailed him detailed schematics within an hour. Back home, Marcus surveyed his backyard with new eyes. The main sewer line ran 12 feet underground, parallel to the property line. The access point was hidden behind his garden shed, covered by a metal plate that hadn't been disturbed in years. But first, he needed to document everything. Marcus retrieved his camera and methodically photographed Karen's illegal connection from every angle. The black hose snaking under the fence, the T-joint spliced into his water line, the professional fittings that suggested this wasn't some temporary setup. His phone rang. Sarah again. Dad, I've been thinking about your water bill. Have you considered that maybe someone is stealing from you? Marcus almost laughed. What makes you say that? I had a client once whose neighbor was running an illegal car wash operation off their water line. The bills were astronomical before they figured it out. That's actually very insightful. So you'll call the police. Marcus looked at the photos on his camera, then at the sewer access plate. I'm going to handle it myself. Dad, if someone is stealing from you, Sarah, trust me. I know exactly what I'm doing. After hanging up, Marcus began the physical work. The sewer access plate came up easier than expected, revealing a concrete-lined chamber with the main sewer line running through it. The smell was unpleasant, but not overwhelming. The system was well maintained. Installing the T-joint took 3 hours of careful work. Marcus's back ached from crouching in the confined space, but his hands remained steady as he connected the new valve system. The engineering was elegant in its simplicity, a 3-way valve that could redirect flow instantly from the normal sewer line to his new auxiliary line. The auxiliary line would connect to Karen's pool system. By Thursday evening, the installation was complete. Marcus tested the valve mechanism a dozen times, ensuring smooth operation. The hosing lay coiled and ready, hidden beneath a tarp behind his shed. Friday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Marcus was having coffee on his back porch when Jessica appeared at the fence line, her face pale and drawn. Mr. Chen, could I talk to you for a minute? Marcus approached the fence, noting the dark circles under her eyes. Of course, Jessica, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. She glanced back toward her mother's house. Are you really connected to our pool somehow? The question hung in the air. Marcus studied Jessica's face, seeing genuine distress rather than her mother's calculated manipulation. Why are you asking? Because I've been looking at Mom's bills, and something doesn't add up. Jessica's voice dropped to a whisper. Her water usage is almost nothing, but she's running a pool and hot tub constantly. And yesterday I found some paperwork in her office. Installation receipts that mention connecting to an existing water source. Marcus felt a flicker of sympathy for the young woman. Jessica, she's stealing from you, isn't she? The words came out in a rush. That's why you were so angry the other day. That's why our water bill is so low, and yours must be. Your mother made her position very clear. She has lawyers and connections, and I'm just a bitter old man. Jessica's face crumpled. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. If I had known, what would you have done? I would have made her stop. I would have made her pay you back. Jessica wiped her eyes. Mr. Chen, I know my mother can be ... difficult, but this is theft. This is wrong. Marcus looked at this young woman clearly trying to do the right thing, despite her mother's influence. For a moment, he considered calling off his plan. Then, he remembered Karen's smile, her threats, her assumption that he was powerless. Jessica, I want you to know that I don't hold you responsible for your mother's actions. But what are you going to do? Marcus glanced toward Karen's house. where he could see workers setting up tables and umbrellas for tomorrow's party. "I'm going to resolve the situation?" What does that mean? It means your mother is going to learn that actions have consequences. Jessica's eyes widened. "Mr. Chen, please don't do anything that will get you in trouble. She really does have connections, and she's vindictive when she's angry. I appreciate your concern." Marcus turned to go back inside. But some things are worth the risk. That evening, Marcus made his final preparations. The valve system was tested and ready. The auxiliary hose was positioned and concealed. His camera was charged and equipped with a telephoto lens. At midnight, he made the final connection. Working by flashlight, Marcus carefully attached a flexible hosing to Karen's pool filtration system. The connection was invisible in the darkness, hidden behind the equipment housing where it wouldn't be noticed during the party setup. As he worked, he could hear Karen inside her house laughing on the phone with someone about tomorrow's celebration. Her voice carried through the sliding door she'd left open to cool the house. "It's going to be absolutely perfect, Linda. The weather forecast is ideal. The catering is top-notch, and the pool looks like something from a resort. Everyone's going to be so impressed." Marcus tightened the final connection and smiled. Yes, Karen, everyone was going to be impressed. Saturday morning dawned crystal clear, with temperatures already climbing toward 90 degrees by 10 a.m., Marcus watched from his kitchen window as the catering trucks arrived at Karen's house, followed by a parade of delivery vans carrying flowers, linens, and what appeared to be a professional DJ setup. Karen emerged from her house at 11 a.m., looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Her white linen dress was perfectly pressed, her hair styled in elegant waves, and she moved with the confident stride of someone who believed the world existed for her pleasure. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from his neighbor across the street. "Tom Martinez looks like Karen's throwing quite the party. You invited," he texted back. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." By noon, the transformation was complete. Backyard had become an outdoor paradise. White market umbrellas provided shade over elegantly set tables. Servers in crisp uniforms arranged champagne flutes and artfully plated appetizers. The pool sparkled like a jewel, its surface so clear it looked like glass. Marcus positioned himself at his upstairs bedroom window with his camera and a pair of binoculars. He had a perfect view of the entire party area, and more importantly, a clear line of sight to the pool equipment housing where his auxiliary hose waited. The first guests arrived at 1 p.m. Marcus recognized most of them neighborhood couples. Local business owners. Members of the country club where Karen played tennis, they entered through the side gate, their voices carrying across the fence in excited chatter about the beautiful setup. "Karen, this is absolutely stunning. Your pool is incredible. It's like a resort. How do you get the water so clear?" Karen basked in the praise, holding court by the pool's edge with a champagne flute in hand. She wore the expression of someone who'd never questioned whether she deserved the admiration she received. At 1:30, the guests Marcus had been waiting for arrived. City Councilman Robert Hayes and his wife, followed by Councilwoman Maria Santos. These were Karen's heavy hitters, the connections she'd bragged about. They were greeted with extra fanfare, seated at the best table, and immediately served the most expensive champagne. "Robert, you simply must try the pool," Karen gushed, leading him toward the water. "The temperature is perfect, and the filtration system is top of the line." Marcus checked his watch. 2:15 p.m. In 45 minutes, he would walk to his backyard, turn a simple valve, and watch Karen's perfect world collapse. But first, he wanted to document everything. The camera clicked steadily as he captured the scene, the elegant party, the admiring guests, Karen's triumphant smile, evidence of what she'd built with stolen water. At 2:30, something unexpected happened. Jessica appeared at the party, looking uncomfortable in a dress that clearly wasn't her style. Marcus watched through his binoculars as she approached her. Mother, their conversation too distant to hear, but their body language telling the story. Jessica was agitated, gesturing toward Marcus's house. Karen's smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. She took her daughter's arm and led her away from the other guests, their voices rising despite their attempt at discretion. Marcus adjusted his binoculars, trying to read their lips. He caught fragments, Jessica saying, "Not right," and "pay him." Back Karen responding with sharp gestures and an expression that could freeze champagne. The conversation ended with Jessica shaking her head and walking away, leaving Karen standing alone by the pool equipment housing. For a moment, her mask slipped completely, and Marcus saw raw anger flash across her face. Then she noticed him. In his window, even from a distance, Marcus could feel the intensity of her stare. Karen raised her champagne glass in a mocking toast, her smile cold and predatory. The message was clear. I see you watching, and I'm not afraid. Marcus lifted his camera and took a photograph of her gesture. Through the telephoto lens, he could see her face, clearly the calculating eyes, the cruel smile, the absolute certainty that she was untouchable. She was about to learn otherwise. At 2:45, Marcus made his way downstairs and into his backyard. The valve control was hidden behind his garden shed, exactly where he'd installed it. The mechanism was simple: turn clockwise. For normal sewer flow, turn counterclockwise to redirect to Karen's pool. He could hear the party in full swing over the fence. Laughter, music, the splash of someone diving into the pool. Karen's voice rose above the rest, telling an animated story about her recent real estate triumph. Marcus pulled out his phone and set a timer for 15 minutes. He wanted to give the system time to work, to build pressure in the lines, to ensure maximum impact. At 2:58, he turned the valve. The change wasn't immediate. Municipal water systems operated on pressure and gravity, and it would take several minutes for the flow to reverse and the new liquid to travel through the pipes. Marcus climbed his stepladder and positioned himself at the fence line with his camera. This was a moment that needed to be documented. At 3:03, the first guest noticed something wrong. Karen, is your pool supposed to be bubbling like that? Marcus watched as Karen hurried to the pool's edge, her brow furrowed with confusion. Small bubbles were rising from the water, not the pleasant, champagne-like effervescence of a hot tub, but something darker and more ominous. It's probably just the filtration system cycling, Karen said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. At 3:05, the smell hit. It started as a subtle wrongness in the air, something that made guests pause mid-conversation and wrinkle their noses. Within seconds, it intensified into something unmistakable and horrifying. "Oh my God," someone gasped. "What is that smell?" The pool water, once crystal clear, began to darken. Brown swirls emerged from the filtration jets, spreading like toxic ink through the pristine water. The smell raw sewage mixed with chemicals became overwhelming. Guests began backing away from the pool, hands covering their noses and mouths. The elegant party atmosphere dissolved into chaos as people grabbed their purses and began making hasty excuses. "I think there's a problem with your plumbing, Karen," Councilman Hayes said, his face pale with disgust. "We should probably leave." But Karen wasn't listening. She stood frozen at the pool's edge, watching her perfect oasis transform into a nightmare. The water was now undeniably brown, with solid matter floating on the surface. The smell was so intense that several guests were openly gagging. "This can't be happening," she whispered, loud enough for Marcus to hear. "This can't be happening." The DJ had stopped the music. The caterers were frantically covering the food. Guests were streaming toward the exit, their elegant clothes held away from their bodies as they tried to escape the stench. Within 10 minutes, the party was over. The beautiful backyard was empty except for Karen, who stood alone beside her ruined pool, her white dress seeming to glow in the afternoon sun. Marcus climbed down from his ladder and walked to the fence line. When Karen finally looked up, her face was a mask of fury and devastation. "You," she said, her voice barely controlled. "You did this." "I have no idea what you're talking about," Marcus replied calmly, "but it looks like you have a serious plumbing problem." Karen's hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police. This is sabotage." This is what happens when you steal," Marcus interrupted. "You've been using my water for 6 months, Karen. My water, my money, my bills. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? You can't prove anything." Marcus held up his camera, showing her the photos he'd taken of her illegal connection. "Actually, I can prove everything. The hose, the connections, the water bills. I have documentation going back 6 months. Karen's face went white. "You bastard! Do you have any idea what you've done?" Those were important people. Clients, business contacts. And now they all know what kind of person you really are. The pool continued to bubble and churn, releasing fresh waves of stench into the air. Karen's perfect party was now a scene from a horror movie, complete with floating debris and a smell that would linger in the neighborhood for days. "This isn't over," Karen said, her voice shaking with rage. "I will destroy you for this." Marcus looked at her ruined pool, her empty party area, her devastated expression. For the first time in 6 months, he felt truly satisfied. "Karen," he said quietly, "I think you'll find that you've already been destroyed." The smell lingered for 3 days. Marcus watched from his kitchen window as a parade of service trucks arrived at Karen's house. Pool cleaning companies, plumbing contractors, and hazmat specialists in full protective gear worked around the Channel 7's environmental reporter, standing in front of Karen's house with a barely concealed smirk, delivered the story, with the kind of barely restrained glee that comes with covering a perfect disaster. What residents are calling the pool party from hell. The homeowner, prominent real estate agent Karen Whitmore, has declined to comment. Phone had been ringing constantly. Neighbors wanting to know if he'd heard about poor Karen's plumbing disaster. Friends expressing sympathy for her terrible luck, his daughter Sarah calling to make sure his own plumbing was working properly. He told them all the same thing. These old houses can have mysterious problems. But the real entertainment came from social media. Had become a cautionary tale shared across neighborhood Facebook groups and local Twitter feeds. The hashtag pool party disaster was trending locally, with photos and videos from fleeing guests spreading like wildfire. In Elena's day, embarrassment was a private affair. Now, Karen's downfall was being documented and shared by dozens of witnesses, each adding their own commentary to the disaster. The doorbell rang Tuesday morning. Marcus opened it to find Detective Lisa Park from the city police, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes sharp with intelligence. "Mr. Chen, I'm Detective Park. I'd like to ask you a few questions about the incident at your neighbor's house." Marcus had been expecting this visit, of course. "Would you like some coffee?" They sat at his kitchen table, the same table where he'd planned his revenge just days before. "Miss Whitmore has made some serious allegations. She claims you deliberately sabotaged her plumbing system. She says you admitted to it during an argument after the party." Marcus sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "Detective, I've lived next to Karen Whitmore for 8 years. If I wanted to get revenge on her, don't you think I would have done it years ago?" Detective Park made a note. "She also claims you've been harassing her about some kind of water connection. Now that's interesting." Marcus stood and retrieved a folder from his counter. "I have been having issues with my water bill. Take a look at these." Detective Park's eyebrows rose as she studied the numbers. "This is quite an increase. Have you identified the source?" "I have." Marcus pulled out his photographs of Karen's illegal connection. "Your neighbor has been stealing my water to fill her pool." Detective Park examined the photos carefully, her professional demeanor shifting to genuine interest. "These show a direct connection from her pool system to your water line. 6 months of theft. My bills went from an average of $80 per month to over $400. Have you reported this to the water department?" "I planned to, but then her plumbing problem resolved the situation naturally." Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Sometimes the universe has a sense of justice." Detective Park closed her notebook. "Mr. Chen, I need to ask you directly. Did you do anything to cause the sewage backup in Ms. Whitmore's pool?" Marcus looked out his window toward Karen's house, where workers were still laboring to repair the damage. "Detective, I'm a 62-year-old retired engineer. Do you really think I have the knowledge or ability to hack into the municipal sewer system?" It wasn't technically a lie. He hadn't hacked anything. He'd simply redirected flow-through existing systems. Detective Park followed his gaze. "The water department is investigating the cause of the backup." She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Mr. Chen, off the record. Those water bills and photos you showed me. You should definitely report that theft to the proper authorities." After she left, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. He'd been an engineer for 40 years. He understood how to make problems disappear into bureaucratic complexity. Rare, but not impossible. A tragic accident that just happened to occur during Karen's biggest social event of the year. His phone rang. Sarah again. "Dad, I saw the news about your neighbor's pool party. That's horrible. Do you think it was some kind of plumbing failure?" "These old systems can be unpredictable," Marcus said. But there's something else you should know. I discovered she's been stealing water from my line. What, Dad? That's theft. You need to report her. I already have. The police were just here taking my statement. Good. I hope they throw the book at her. How much did she steal? Marcus looked at his calculated figures. About $2,000 over 6 months. Sarah's gasp was audible. $2,000, Dad. That's serious money. She needs to pay that back immediately. I have a feeling she's going to have other priorities for a while. That afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. You don't owe me any apology, Jessica. Yes, I do. She stepped onto his porch, her voice shaking. I confronted my mother about the water theft. She admitted everything. She said it was just business and that you'd never figure it out. Marcus felt a flicker of sympathy for the young woman. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. She's furious with me for talking to you. She says I betrayed the family. Jessica's laugh was bitter. But stealing from our neighbor for 6 months, that wasn't betraying anything. What will you... I can't live with someone who thinks theft is acceptable as long as you don't get caught. Jessica pulled an envelope from her purse. This is for you. It's not nearly enough, but it's what I can afford right now. Marcus opened the envelope to find a check for $500. Jessica, I can't accept this. You didn't steal anything, but I benefited from it. I used that pool. I enjoyed those parties. I never questioned where the money came from. She shook her head. My mother raised me better than this, even if she's forgotten her own lessons. Marcus looked at the check, then at Jessica's earnest face. If you insist on doing this, consider it a loan. Pay me back when you're established on your own. Thank you. Jessica's relief was visible, and Mr. Chen, what you did. I can't say I approve of the method, but I understand why you did it. She pushed you too far. After Jessica left, Marcus sat on his porch and watched the continued cleanup efforts at Karen's house. The pool was finally empty, revealing stained concrete. That would require complete resurfacing. The expensive deck furniture had been hauled away as hazardous waste. The beautiful landscaping was trampled and ruined. Karen's perfect oasis had become a construction zone that would take months and tens of thousands of dollars to restore. Something about deliberate misuse of municipal systems in the fine print. Rough break. Marcus typed back, actions have consequences. As the sun set, he allowed himself one moment of complete satisfaction. Karen Whitmore had spent 6 months stealing from him, confident that her connections and threats would protect her from any consequences. She'd been wrong. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully, and she still had those connections she'd bragged about. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Marcus needed to be ready for whatever Karen's desperation might inspire. He stumbled to his bedroom window and froze. 3 city workers in hard hats were cutting down his prized Japanese maple. The tree Alina had planted for their 20th wedding anniversary. The maple that had taken 15 years to reach its current majestic height, its crimson canopy providing shade for his entire back porch. What the hell? Marcus threw on clothes and ran outside, his heart hammering as he watched decades of growth crash to the ground in sections. Stop, he shouted, waving his arms. Stop cutting. The crew leader, a burly man with a clipboard, looked up from his chainsaw. You, Marcus Chen? Yes, but got a work order here. Emergency tree removal. Says this maple is diseased and poses an immediate threat to municipal infrastructure. He showed Marcus an official-looking document. Property owner requested immediate removal. Marcus stared at the paperwork, his mind racing. I didn't request this. I would never, says here. Karen Whitmore filed the complaint as HOA Environmental Compliance Officer. Trees got to come down today. The pieces clicked into place. Karen served on the Homeowners Association board. She had the authority to file environmental complaints, and she obviously knew exactly which tree would hurt Marcus the most. This is harassment, Marcus said, his voice shaking with rage. That tree is perfectly healthy. Sir, I just followed the work orders. You got a problem with the complaint? Take it up with the HOA. The crew leader fired up his chainsaw again. Stand back, please. Marcus watched helplessly as Elena's memorial tree was reduced to a pile of wood chips. Each cut felt like a personal attack, a deliberate desecration of his most precious memory. By noon, his backyard looked like a war zone. Where the magnificent maple had stood for 15 years, There was now only a raw stump and scattered debris. The afternoon sun, no longer filtered through crimson leaves, beat down mercilessly on his back porch. Karen had drawn first blood in the counterattack. The second strike came that afternoon. Marcus returned from the hardware store to find a citation from the city taped to his front door. Violation of Municipal Code 847.3, improper disposal of hazardous materials. The citation claimed that someone had reported suspicious chemical runoff from his property following recent plumbing modifications. The fine was $500, with mandatory environmental inspection scheduled for the following week. Marcus crumpled the citation in his fist. Karen was using the system against him, filing false reports and leveraging her connections to make his life miserable. But unlike her direct theft, these attacks were perfectly legal bureaucratic warfare that was nearly impossible to fight. His phone rang. "Sarah, Dad, what's this about a tree removal?" Mrs. Patterson across the street called Mom's sister, and Karen had the city cut down Elena's maple. The silence on the other end was deafening. When Sarah spoke again, her voice was deadly quiet. She did what? Filed a false complaint with the HOA, said it was diseased. Marcus sat heavily on his porch steps, staring at the empty space where the tree had been. "It wasn't diseased, Sarah. It was perfect." "Dad, that's..." Sarah's voice cracked. "That tree was Mom's. She planted it for your anniversary. How could anyone be so cruel? Because I hurt her, and now she's hurting me back." "No." Sarah's voice turned fierce. "You exposed her for being a thief. She's attacking Mom's memory because she's a vindictive bitch who can't accept responsibility for her own actions." Marcus had never heard his daughter use language like that. The tree had clearly affected her as deeply as it had him. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Marcus looked at the citation in his hand, then at the empty space in his yard. "I'm going to think." That evening, Marcus sat in his workshop, surrounded by the remnants of his revenge planning, the municipal diagrams, the photographs, the carefully calculated timeline evidence of his successful operation against Karen's pool. But success had come with a price. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully, and she had resources he'd underestimated. Her position on the HOA board, her connections in city government, her knowledge of bureaucratic pressure points. She was turning his own tactics against him. The workshop door opened. Tom Martinez peered inside, holding 2 beers. "Heard about your tree. That's rough, Marcus." Marcus accepted the beer gratefully. "Karen's making her move." "Yeah, I figured as much." Tom pulled up a workbench stool. "She's been going door to door in the neighborhood, talking about suspicious activity. At your place, asking people if they've noticed anything unusual." "What kind of unusual?" "Strange smells, late-night digging, unusual visitors. She's trying to build a case that you're the neighborhood troublemaker." Tom sipped his beer. "Most people aren't buying it, especially after word got around about her stealing your water. Most people, well, the Hendersons think you might be running some kind of illegal workshop operation. And Mrs. Chuno's relation is convinced you're hiding environmental violations." Tom shrugged. "Karen's good at planting seeds of doubt." Marcus felt the walls closing in. Karen wasn't just attacking him directly. She was systematically destroying his reputation in the community, where he'd lived peacefully for 8 years. "Tom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Shoot. Do you think I went too far with the pool thing?" Tom was quiet for a long moment, studying his beer bottle. "Marcus, I've lived across from you for 6 years. I've watched you take care of your yard, help neighbors with repairs, shovel Mrs. Patterson's driveway every winter without being asked. You're a good man." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Karen Whitmore is not a good person. She's entitled, manipulative, and apparently a thief. What you did was extreme, but ... double quotes, Tom met his eyes. "Sometimes extreme situations require extreme responses, even if it means escalating into a war. You didn't start this war, Marcus. You just refused to be a victim." Tom finished his beer and stood. "But if you're going to fight Karen Whitmore, you better be prepared for a long campaign. She doesn't give up, and she doesn't fight fair." After Tom left, Marcus sat alone in his workshop, considering his options. He could back down, accept the harassment, and hope Karen would eventually lose interest. He could fight back through official channels, filing counter-complaints and hoping the bureaucracy would side with him. Or he could escalate. Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he was looking for. Detective Park had given him her card with instructions to call if he remembered anything else about the water theft. It was time to remember something. The phone rang twice before she answered. Detective Park. Detective, this is Marcus Chen. I think I need to file a formal complaint against my neighbor for theft and fraud. I'm listening. Karen Whitmore stole approximately $2,000 worth of water from my property over 6 months. I have documentation, photographs, and witness statements. I want to press charges. Detective Park was quiet for a moment. Mr. Chen, when we spoke earlier, you seemed content to let the matter resolve itself naturally. That was before she started retaliating against me for discovering her crime. Marcus looked out at the space where Elena's tree had stood. She's filed false reports with the city, destroyed my property through fraudulent HOA complaints, and is conducting a harassment campaign against me in the neighborhood. Those are serious allegations. I can prove all of them. The question is whether the police department is interested in stopping a criminal who thinks her connections make her untouchable. Another pause. I'll be there in an hour to take your formal statement. Marcus hung up and gathered his evidence. Karen wanted to play hardball. She was about to learn that some games have rules, and theft was still a felony regardless of your social connections. But as he prepared for Detective Park's arrival, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was crossing a line he'd never be able to uncross. Elena's tree was gone forever, but Karen's freedom might be too, if his evidence was as solid as he believed. The war between neighbors was about to become something much more serious and much more permanent.